People often said that Aisha had everything a woman could want. She had a stable home, a kind husband, and a family that stayed close no matter how busy life became. Every Sunday, her parents' house would fill with noise, laughter, clinking cups of tea, her sisters talking over each other, and her mother calling everyone to sit properly. It was warm, familiar, and full of love. And in the center of it all, Aisha always stood out. She had a quick tongue, a bright smile, and a way of making everyone laugh without trying too hard. Hamza, her husband, was nothing like her. He was quiet, steady, and calm in a way that sometimes felt almost distant. He worked long hours, spoke only when needed, and preferred peaceful evenings over loud gatherings. When he did join family dinners, he sat politely, smiled when spoken to, and listened more than he talked. He never tried to compete for attention. And maybe that was why Aisha often pulled him into the spotlight. Though not in the way a loving partner should. It started with small jokes. The first time, it was barely noticeable. Someone asked how married life was, and Aisha laughed lightly. "Oh, it's fine. Just a little boring. Hamza doesn't even argue. I think I married the quietest man alive." Everyone laughed, including Hamza. He smiled gently, lowering his gaze as if he didn't mind. That moment passed easily. No one thought much of it, but Aisha noticed something important. People laughed when she said things like that. And she liked making people laugh, so she did it again at another gathering. Her younger sister teased her about cooking, and Aisha shrugged with a grin. "Why would I learn? Hamza doesn't complain about anything. I could probably serve him plain bread every day, and he'd still say thank you." Laughter again. Louder this time. Hamza was sitting right there. He smiled, nodded slightly, and took a sip of his tea. To Aisha, it felt harmless. It was just playful talk. She wasn't insulting him, she told herself. She was just describing him. In a funny way. Weeks passed, and the jokes became part of her personality. If someone asked about Hamza, she had something ready. "Honestly, I think he talks more to his laptop than to me." If there was a competition for silence, Hamza would win without even trying. Her sisters would giggle. Her parents would shake their heads with amused smiles, and the room would fill with easy laughter. It made Aisha feel lively, interesting, admired. And every time Hamza stayed the same. He didn't argue. He didn't interrupt. He didn't correct her. He just stayed quiet. At first, Aisha admired that about him. She thought he was patient, mature, understanding. But slowly she stopped thinking about his feelings at all. His silence became something she relied on. She knew he wouldn't react. She knew he wouldn't make things uncomfortable, so she never stopped at home. Their life was simple. Hamza would come back from work, place his keys carefully on the table, and ask Aisha how her day was. He listened when she spoke, nodded when she complained about small things, and sometimes offered soft advice. He noticed things she didn't like when she seemed tired, or when she forgot to eat. He would quietly bring her a glass of water, or make tea without being asked. But Aisha rarely noticed these things deeply. To her, this was just how he was. Quiet, predictable, a little dull. And sometimes, when she was on the phone with her sister or chatting with her mother, she would joke about him even when he was in the same room. "Hamza is sitting right here, but he's probably not even listening," she would say. Laughing. Hamza would hear it. Of course he would. But he never said anything. One evening, as Aisha laughed on a call with her cousin, she said, "I think if I disappear for a whole day, Hamza might not even notice." She turned around after ending the call and saw him standing near the doorway. For a brief moment, their eyes met. There was something in his expression, something quiet but heavy, but it disappeared so quickly that Aisha ignored it. "Did you need something?" she asked casually. Hamza shook his head. "No, I was just passing by." And that was it. No argument. No complaint. Just silence. Days turned into months, and the pattern continued. Family gatherings remained the same. Aisha remained the center of attention. Hamza remained the quiet presence beside her. If anyone ever felt uncomfortable, they never showed it. It all seemed normal until one particular Sunday. The house was especially lively that day. Aisha's older sister had come to visit after a long time, and everyone was excited. The dining table was full. Plates passed around quickly, voices overlapping, laughter echoing through the walls. Aisha was in her element. She told stories, exaggerated small moments, and made everyone laugh. Her sister asked how married life had been treating her. Aisha leaned back with a playful sigh. "Honestly, sometimes I feel like I live alone," she said, smiling. "Hamza is there, of course, but he's so quiet, it's like having a shadow instead of a person." The room burst into laughter. Even her father chuckled softly. Aisha smiled wider, enjoying the reaction. She glanced at Hamza, expecting to see his usual calm smile. But he wasn't smiling. He was looking at his plate, still silent for a moment. Something inside Aisha shifted, but she pushed it away quickly. It was nothing, she told herself. He's just tired. She continued talking, telling another story, making another joke. The laughter returned louder than before. But Hamza didn't join this time. He sat quietly, his hands resting near his plate, his expression unreadable. At one point, Aisha's mother asked him a question and he answered politely. His voice was calm, respectful, exactly the same as always. Nothing seemed wrong. And yet, something felt different. Ayi couldn't explain it. But there was a strange weight in the air. After dinner, as everyone moved to the living room, Aisha once again found herself surrounded by her sisters. They teased her about married life, about romance, about how quiet her husband was, and, like always, she responded with humor. Romance. She laughed. With Hamza. Please. He probably thinks holding hands is a big event. The laughter came instantly, but this time, it didn't feel as light, because in that moment, Aisha noticed something she had never truly seen. Before, Hamza was standing across the room, watching her, not smiling, not looking away, just watching. His eyes were combust. There was something deep inside them. Something that made her chest tighten for a brief second. It wasn't anger, it wasn't even sadness in a clear skin way. It was something quieter, something heavier. Something that felt like it had been building for a long time. Aisha's smile faltered for just a second. But then someone said something else, and the moment passed. The laughter returned, and she slipped back into her usual rhythm. Still, she couldn't forget that look. Later that evening, as they prepared to leave, Aisha felt unusually quiet. Hamza helped her gather her things, just like always. He thanked her parents politely, said goodbye to everyone, and walked beside her to the car. The ride home was silent. Not uncomfortable, just quiet. Aisha glanced at him once or twice, expecting him to say something, to make a small comment, to react in any way, but he didn't. His hand stayed steady on the wheel. His eyes focused on the road ahead. And for the first time, his silence didn't feel safe. It felt like distance when they reached home. Hamza parked the car and stepped out without saying anything. Aisha followed him inside, watching him closely now. He placed his keys on the table, just like always. He removed his shoes. Just like always. Everything looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. Aisha opened her mouth, thinking of saying something light, something to break the quiet, but the words didn't come. Because deep down, a small unfamiliar thought had started to grow. What if he wasn't okay anymore? She pushed it away quickly. It was just a joke. She told herself again, just words, just laughter, nothing serious. But as Hamza walked past her without looking up, heading quietly to the other room, that thought didn't leave. Instead, it stayed, growing slowly, waiting, and somewhere inside that quiet space between them, something had already begun to change, even though Aisha didn't fully understand it yet. The room was still filled with the echo of laughter when everything changed. Aisha had just finished her sentence, smiling as her sisters leaned toward her, enjoying the joke. She expected the moment to pass like all the others, light, harmless, forgotten within seconds. But it didn't, because this time, Hamza didn't lower his eyes or hide behind a quiet smile. He looked at her, not quickly, not shyly, but directly. Aisha felt it before she fully saw it. Something in the air shifted, like a sudden pause in a flowing river. The laughter faded slowly, one voice at a time, until the room fell into an awkward silence that no one knew how to fill. Hamza placed his teacup down carefully. The soft sound of porcelain against the table felt louder than anything else in that moment. Then he spoke. "Do you really feel like that?" His voice was calm, but it carried weight. Not loud, not sharp, just steady, clear, and impossible to ignore. Aisha blinked, caught off guard. For a second, she thought he was joking back, trying to play along in his own quiet way. She let out a small laugh. "Oh, come on, I was just joking." But no one else laughed this time. Hamza didn't move. His eyes stayed on her, searching, waiting. "I know," he said softly. "You always are." Something about the way he said it made Aisha's smile fade. There was no anger in his tone, but there was something else, something deeper. Something that felt like it had been sitting inside him for a long time. The room remained silent. Even her sisters, who usually jumped into every moment, stayed quiet. Watching carefully, Aisha shifted slightly in her seat. "It's not a big deal," she added, trying to lighten the mood. "Everyone knows I don't mean it." Hamza nodded slowly, as if he had expected that answer. "Maybe you don't," he said, "but it still feels real when you say it." The words landed heavily. Aisha felt her chest tighten, though she didn't understand why. She opened her mouth again, but nothing came out this time. "I never said anything before." Hamza continued, his voice steady, but softer now. "I thought maybe it was just your way of having fun. I didn't want to make things uncomfortable for you." He paused for a brief moment, glancing around the room, then back at her. But it kept happening. Shah's fingers curled slightly in her lap. She could feel everyone watching, waiting. "I started to wonder," he went on, "if that's really how you see me." The question wasn't asked loudly. It wasn't even asked directly, but it hung there between them, heavy and impossible to ignore. Aisha felt something unfamiliar rise inside her, a mix of confusion, discomfort, and something sharper that she didn't want to name. "That's not fair," she said quickly, her voice slightly defensive now. "You know me? I joke about everything. It's just how I am." Hamza nodded again, but this time his expression didn't soften. "I do know you," he said. "That's why I stayed quiet." The words hit harder than she expected. "I thought if I didn't react, it would stay light," he added. "I thought it didn't matter that much." A small pause followed, but it did. The simplicity of those two words made the silence even heavier. Aisha looked down for a moment, then back up at him. She wasn't used to this. Hamza never spoke like this. He never brought up feelings in front of others. He never challenged her, never questioned her, and now, suddenly, he was doing all of it at once. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, her voice softer now. "I know," he replied. There was no accusation in his tone. "That made it worse, but it still hurts," he added quietly. That word again, hurts. It echoed in Aisha's mind, louder than any laughter that had filled the room before. She looked around briefly, noticing her family's expressions: concern, discomfort, silence. No one was smiling anymore. No one found anything funny for the first time. Aisha felt exposed, not because of what she had said, but because of what she had been doing all along without realizing its weight. Hamza took a small breath, as if deciding whether to say more. "I didn't need you to praise me," he said. "I didn't expect anything big. I just thought, at least in front of others, you'd stand with me, not against me." Aisha felt her throat tighten. "I never thought I was against you," she whispered. "But it felt like that," he replied gently. There was no anger in his face, no harshness in his voice, just truth. And somehow, that truth felt heavier than any argument. Aisha shook her head slightly, as if trying to clear her thoughts. "You should have told me before," she said. Why didn't you say something earlier? Hamza gave a faint, tired smile. Because I didn't want to be the reason you stopped laughing. He said the answer came so simply, yet it carried something deep. I thought your happiness mattered more. Aisha's heart sank in that moment. She saw everything differently. Every time he stayed silent. Every time he smiled even when the joke was about him. Every time he chose not to speak. It wasn't because he didn't feel anything, it was because he chose her comfort over his own. And she had mistaken that for indifference. The realization came slowly, but once it settled, it didn't leave. I'm sorry, she said again. But this time the words felt smaller. Weaker.Hamza didn't respond right away. He simply nodded, as if acknowledging the effort, but not fully accepting it yet. I think I need some air, he said after a moment. He stood up quietly, excused himself politely to the family, walked out of the room. No one stopped him. No one knew what to say. The door closed softly behind him, but the sound felt final. Aisha stayed where she was, her hands still in her lap, her mind racing. The room felt different now, not warm, not lively, just heavy. Her sisters avoided her gaze. Her mother sighed softly, adjusting the plates on the table even though there was nothing left to fix. Aisha stood up slowly, unsure of what to do next. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like talking, she didn't feel like laughing, she didn't feel like being the center of attention. Instead, she felt something unfamiliar settling deep inside her. Guilt. Not light, passing guilt, but real. Steady guilt that didn't disappear when she tried to ignore it. She replayed his words in her mind. I just needed you to be on my side. The sentence echoed, again and again, each time cutting a little deeper. Aisha stepped outside after a few minutes, looking around for him. The night air was cool, quiet, almost too still. She saw him standing near the gate, his back turned, his shoulders slightly tense. For a moment, she thought about going to him, saying something, fixing it quickly, the way she fixed everything else. But something stopped her, because she realized this wasn't something that could be fixed with a quick joke or a simple apology. This was something that had been building over time, and now it had finally broken through. Hamza didn't turn around. He didn't call her. He just stood there. Alone in the quiet, Aisha felt a strange distance between them, even though they were only a few steps apart. It wasn't physical, it was emotional, and for the first time, she didn't know how to cross it after a while. Hamza walked back inside without looking at her. He didn't say anything, didn't ask anything, just moved past her as if he needed space more than anything else. The rest of the evening passed slowly. No more jokes, no more laughter, only polite conversations and quiet movements. When they finally left, the car ride was even quieter than before. Aisha looked out the window, her thoughts heavy, her heart unsettled. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words felt stuck, because now every sentence she thought of sounded too small compared to what had been said. When they reached home, Hamza stepped out again without speaking. Aisha followed. Watching him closely, he went inside, placed his keys on the table, and moved toward the bedroom. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal anymore. Aisha stood there for a moment, unsure. Then slowly she sat down. The silence around her felt louder than any laughter she had ever created, and deep inside, one thought kept repeating, maybe this time. Her joke hadn't ended when the laughter stopped. Maybe this time, it had just begun. The next morning arrived without warmth. Aisha woke up earlier than usual, her eyes opening before the alarm, her mind already heavy. For a few seconds, she lay still, hoping the uneasy feeling from the night before would fade. But it didn't. It sat in her chest, quiet and firm, reminding her that something had changed. She turned her head toward the other side of the bed. It was empty. The blanket was folded neatly. His side looked untouched, as if he had already been gone for a while. Aisha sat up quickly, her heart beating a little faster than it should. She looked around the room, then stepped out into the hallway. The house was silent, no sound of the kettle, no soft footsteps, no quiet presence moving from one room to another. She walked into the kitchen, nothing, only a clean counter and a single glass placed upside down to dry. Aisha stood there for a moment, staring at it. It was such a small thing, but it made the emptiness feel louder. Hamza always left small signs of himself behind his cup. His keys, the faint sound of him getting ready. But today, there was nothing. No message, no note, no sign that he had even been there that morning. Aisha's chest tightened. She told herself not to overthink. Maybe he had an early meeting. Maybe he didn't want to wake her. Maybe everything was normal. But deep down, she knew it. WASN single quotes too. The silence from the night before had followed them into the morning. And now it felt like it had settled into the walls of the house. She made herself tea, but it didn't taste the same. She sat at the table, holding the cup in both hands, staring at nothing in particular. Her mind replayed everything from the previous evening: the laughter, his voice, his words, "I don't want to be your joke." The sentence came back again. Stronger this time. Aisha closed her eyes briefly. For the first time, she didn't try to defend herself in her thoughts. She didn't say, "I didn't mean it," or "it was just fun." Those excuses felt empty now. Instead, she saw things clearly. All those moments, all those jokes, all those times. She chose laughter over respect. She had never thought of herself as someone who could hurt others so deeply. She had always believed she was kind, loving, easy to be with, but now she wasn't so sure. The day moved slowly. Aisha tried to distract herself, cleaning, organizing, checking her phone again and again. But nothing helped. The house felt too quiet, too still. She found herself noticing things she had never paid attention to before. The way Hamza kept his books, arranged in a straight line. The way he folded his clothes neatly, without leaving anything out of place. The way he always filled the water bottles before going to bed. All the small, silent acts that had made their life easier. Smoother. Acts she had accepted without thinking. Acts she had never appreciated out loud. Aisha sat down on the edge of the bed, her fingers tracing the edge of the blanket. "Why didn't I see it?" she whispered to herself. But there was no answer by the time evening approached. Her restlessness had grown. She kept looking at the door, waiting for the sound of his footsteps. When it finally came, her heart skipped. The door opened quietly. Hamza stepped inside, just like always. He removed his shoes, placed his keys on the table, and walked in without looking up. Everything looked the same, but Aisha noticed the difference now. The distance, the quiet that didn't feel gentle anymore. She stood near the doorway, unsure for a second, then gathered her courage. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. Hamza paused. For a brief moment, it seemed like he might say no. But then he nodded once. "Okay." They moved to the living room. Not too close, not too far, just enough space to feel the gap between them. Aisha sat down, her hands resting tightly in her lap. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her voice. "I've been thinking all day," she began. Hamza didn't interrupt. "I didn't realize how much I hurt you," she said. "I thought it was just jokes, just words." Her voice trembled slightly. "But I see now. They weren't just words to you." Hamza looked at her, his expression calm but guarded. Aisha swallowed. "I kept laughing," she continued, "and I never stopped to think how it sounded, how it felt for you. I made it seem like you didn't matter, like you weren't enough." The words were hard to say, but she forced herself to continue. "I didn't mean to do that," she said, "but I still did it." A long silence followed. Aisha looked down, then back up. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "not just for yesterday, but for all the times before that." Hamza leaned back slightly, his eyes still on her. "I know you didn't mean it," he said after a moment. His voice was softer now, but there was still a layer of distance in it. "That's what makes it confusing," he added. "Because if you didn't mean it, then why did it happen so many times? Aisha didn't have an easy answer. She shook her head slowly. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe I got used to it. Maybe I liked the attention. Maybe I didn't think it mattered. She paused, her voice lowering. But it did matter. I see that now. Hamza didn't respond immediately. He looked away for a moment. Then back at her. I never needed you to show me off, he said. I never needed big words or big actions. He paused briefly. I just needed you to respect me, especially when others were watching. Aya felt tears rise in her eyes. I know, she whispered, and I failed at that. The honesty in her voice softened something in the room. Not completely, but enough to shift the tension slightly. I don't want to be someone you laugh at, Hamza said. I want to be someone you stand with. Keisha nodded quickly. I want that too, she said. I want to stand with you. I want to be better. For you, for us. Hamza studied her face carefully, as if trying to understand if her words were real. If they would last beyond this moment, I don't expect everything to change overnight, he said. I know, Aisha replied, but I'm willing to try. I don't want to lose what we have, especially not because of something I can fix. Another pause. This one felt different, less heavy, more uncertain. Aya slowly moved her hand closer to his, not touching, just close enough to ask without words. Hamza looked down at her hand for a second. Nothing happened then. Slowly he reached out and held it. Not tightly, not completely, but enough. Aisha felt her breath catch it. Wasn't a full return. It wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was something. I don't want to feel small in my own home. Hamza said quietly. You won't, Aisha replied, her voice steady now. Not again. He nodded slightly. I don't want to feel like I have to stay silent to keep things peaceful. You don't have to, she said. I want you to speak. I want to hear you, even if it's hard. Hamza looked at her again. This time, there was less distance in his eyes. Not gone, but softer. I'm not perfect either, he said. Maybe I should have said something earlier. Maybe, Aisha said gently, but I should have noticed. I should have cared enough to see it myself. The truth in that moment settled between them, not as a weight, but as something honest, something real. They sat there quietly for a while, their hands still lightly joined. No rush, no pressure, just a quiet understanding beginning to form. That night, they didn't try to force conversation. They didn't pretend everything was fine, but they also didn't avoid each other. They moved around the house together, slowly, carefully, as if learning a new rhythm. Aisha noticed the small things again, but this time, she didn't ignore them. When Hamza placed the water bottles on the table, she said, "Thank you." When he asked if she had eaten, she answered with a soft smile, and when they sat down side by side, the silence between them didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like space. Space to rebuild, space to understand, space to heal. Later that night, as the lights dimmed and the house grew quiet, Aisha lay beside him, her thoughts calmer than they had been all day. She didn't reach for her phone. She didn't fill the silence with unnecessary words. She simply stayed there, present, aware, careful, and for the first time in a long while, she understood something deeply. Love wasn't always loud. It wasn't always laughter. Sometimes it was quiet. Sometimes it was patience. Sometimes it was choosing your words carefully, because they mattered more than you realized. Beside her, Hamza shifted slightly, turning toward her just a little. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Aisha closed her eyes, holding on to that small movement like a promise. Not that everything was fixed, but that something had begun again. And this time, she wouldn't turn it into a joke.